I've seen towns explode into cities. I've seen towns with their hearts ripped out. Every town has its own tales of triumph and catastrophe. All of them face challenges. As a geographer, I believe that towns are the communities of the future. Towns will be the places we want to live.
By 2030, a staggering 92% of us will be living the urban life. Congested cities sprawl across our map. But cities don't have all the answers. I believe we need to fall back in love with the places that first quickened our pulses. Towns. Smaller than a city, more intimate, much greener, more surprising. Towns are where we learned to be urban. They are the building blocks of our civilization. Coastal towns, market towns, river towns, industrial towns. Collectively, they bind our land together. This is the story of towns, but it's also our story, where we came from, how we live, and where we might be going. This is Totnes, a Saxon river town in South Devon. Population 8,200, it's had tough times through its long history. But adversity has taught it to innovate. It's home to one of the greatest social experiments of the 20th century. And today, it's the testbed for an ambitious new idea that aims to change our urban life forever.
It's an idea which could only have come out of a town, not a village, not a city, because towns are the right scale to be urban laboratories, and arguably Totnes is the leading urban laboratory.
Just after the Norman Conquest, a Welshman, Geoffrey of Monmouth, wrote a comprehensive history of Britain. It begins with a hero, Brutus the Trojan, who sails across the sea and then up this river to found a great nation on a fabulous unexplored island. Brutus named the new island after himself, calling it Britain. He stepped ashore, local legend tells us, a few miles up the River Dart, uttering the words, "Here I stand, and here I rest, and this good town shall be called Totnes." Every town has its local law, but it doesn't get much better than being the place where the nation began.
For me, the River Dart is a lot more than a river. I paddled up this river when I was 16, all the way from the open sea, far inland, to Totnes. It was the first proper river journey I'd ever done, and it excited my imagination so that when I came to read Joseph Conrad's book, Art of Darkness, I had all of the images, the impressions that I needed. I was on that Conradian river, and Totnes for me was part imagined, part mythological.
Deep beneath the hull of this canoe is a flooded land. At the end of the last ice age, sea levels rose dramatically, turning the winding Dart Valley into a great estuary. The drowning of the woods and the meadows meant that great ships could sail right up here, far inland. And that's why the town of Totnes was born. In a way, the Heart of Darkness analogy isn't as odd as it might seem. All towns have tough times. But since I canoed up here as a 16-year-old, Totnes has had more than its fair share of dark moments.
This is where I landed at the end of my teenage voyage back in 1970, but already I can see that a lot has changed. This history of Totnes was published a few years before I made that voyage, and in a chapter called Modern Times, the author celebrates what he sees as a timely revival of the town's good fortunes. There's a new bacon factory, a new dairy, a new livestock market. Those three developments alone brought 600 jobs to a town of only 8,000 people. Down there at Baltic Wharf, another business and importer was bringing in 40 shiploads of timber from the Baltic every year. 4 decades after I paddled up here, all those businesses have closed. But, and there's always a but, this is not a town or a tale of doom and gloom. Because taking knocks has taught Totnes to adapt, to innovate, to think creatively, to open its doors to new ideas which larger, more prosperous towns perhaps haven't had to. The absorption of those new ideas, some good, some bad, some successful, some less so, have made the town what it is and bred its key characteristic: vision.
With its big employers now gone, this historic town is heavily reliant on its shops and on visitors who ply up and down the high street through the old Saxon gate, reinvented as the town's iconic clock tower. Totnes has long had a reputation as an alternative haven for the arts and for green living. The Observer newspaper called it the country's funkiest address. In the 1970s, hippies found sanctuary in its calming streets. The bell-bottoms may have gone, but the alternative vision is still very visible. There aren't many small towns where you can buy a pair of sustainably sourced reindeer shoes, or travel in an Indian rickshaw, the brainchild of Devonian Pete Ryland.
Hi, Nick.
But why the rickshaw?
Just like any other town, you know, we need to get as many visitors into the town as possible. There's an awful lot of people come up the river on the boats, and they never make the top of the town. They'll get to the arch halfway up the town, and then they'll just go back down again. So I came up with the idea of, well, why not make it nice and easy? And literally take them all the way to the top of the town, and they can just walk down. The people then see all the shops, don't they, and all the business and all the town. It has worked. You know, last year we took 2,000 people more up the top of the town, and they would never have got there.
I have a bit of a weakness for contraptions. I'm dying to have a ride in it. Can we go for a spin?
Yeah, sure.
One of these is in Pakistan. They're low cost to run, easy to maintain, and they're used as urban taxis all over Asia. But I never expected to see one in Britain. It's a neat idea, a visionary idea. Get people where they want to go and keep the shops in business. It's a win-win-win.
Where many of our high streets bear the scars of commercial despair, this one seems to be as upbeat as it is uphill. And it's incredible to think that this has been the town's main thoroughfare ever since Totnes was built, nearly 200 years before the Norman conquest.
Just coming up to the historic portal into Totnes, East Gate, where you enter the original town. At night, this gate would have been closed with heavy timber doors to protect the walled town, its shops, its businesses, its citizens, make the townspeople feel secure.
Today's townsfolk live in houses that, although rebuilt many times over the centuries, still occupy the same plots that were laid out in Saxon times.
This is a townscape with next to ordinary continuity. The street plan, the footprint of the buildings have hardly changed since Totnes was born.
Totnes was the result of a radical new idea in urban planning, an idea born out of a crisis over 1100 years ago. In the 870s, the Vikings had conquered most of Britain. Only the south of England remained in Saxon hands. A new king, Alfred the Great, took action.
To survive, Alfred was forced to fight and to innovate. He held the Danes at bay and then restored security to his kingdom by creating a visionary new kind of settlement, fortified towns called burhs.
Alfred and his heirs built 30 of their new fortress towns, among them Winchester and Southampton, Oxford and Bath, right across southern England. Totnes was one of 4 burhs in Devon, with a garrison of several hundred defending the crucial highway of the River Dart.
Totnes was a remarkable Saxon experiment in urban planning. Alfred and his heirs realised that strength wasn't just about military might. It was also about economic resilience. To succeed, the burhs needed to be military strongholds, but they also needed to be centres of trade. As merchants, craftsmen, traders were drawn to the protective security of the burhs, they evolved into thriving settlements. The Saxons had created an idea worth defending: towns.
Nothing now remains of the old Saxon wall, and the castle here was built later by the Normans. But the Saxon origins of Totnes are still plain to see. The oval of streets curving around the centre of town follows the perimeter of that original defensive wall, while the Saxon bridge is thought to have occupied the same spot as the one we use today. The bridge, the crossing point, anchors Totnes to its origins, the Dart. Alfred's burhs, his defensive trading posts, were so successful that they proved to have a life far beyond the Viking threat they'd been designed to counter. Burhs became boroughs, laying the foundations for towns as we know them, and giving us place names like Edinburgh and Scarborough, Middlesbrough and Peterborough. To underpin the importance of the burhs, the Saxon kings created new laws guaranteeing their rights and powers. Most significant of all, each burh was allowed to mint its own coinage.
Sealed in this glass case, and they're so precious that we're not allowed to take them out, are the fiscal crown jewels of Totnes. Although I have been allowed to open the door to get a closer look. Amazing. These Saxon coins were all minted in the 10th and 11th centuries, not long before the Normans invaded and overwhelmed Saxon England. Nearly all of them carry the place name Totnes and the name of the king who was on the throne at the time, and also the name of the man who made the coin, the moneyer. Incredible to think that this money was changing hands on the streets of Totnes nearly 1,000 years ago. Currency, the lifeblood of every town.
We know the names of so few Saxon individuals that these tiny coins, inscribed with the names of their makers, Aelfheine and Goda, Aelfstan and Godwin, are a potent bequest from our Saxon ancestors. The successful Saxon town experiment had shown that a resilient urban community had to be built on a healthy local economy. Over 1,000 years later, it's an experiment that's been repeated. Believe it or not, this low-key office on Totnes High Street is also the town's latest bank. not perhaps the smartest I've ever been to.
6 Totnes pounds.
This is one of the most enjoyable banking transactions I think I've ever carried out. Thank you.
Enjoy.
Time to get spending. Ah yes, organic farm shop, all very Totnes. As a complementary currency, the Bank of England needn't worry about the Totnes pound just yet. It's really a thought experiment, a challenge to shoppers to think about how and where they spend their money.
Something Totnes, it'll have to be the lentil pasty, please.
A lentil pasty, very good.
Do you take Totnes pounds?
Yeah, we like Totnes pounds. That's lovely. Thank you very much. I hope you enjoy that.
I'm going to enjoy it. It smells amazing.
The Totnes pound is part of a bold new experiment in urban transformation. It's one of nearly 30 other projects, from garden sharing schemes to the building of sustainable homes, initiated by Transition Town Totnes, or TTT, a community-led movement that took off here in 2006.
All of those initiatives are intended to make communities, whether they're villages, towns or parts of cities, more resilient in the face of what is seen as being three main pressures: economic contraction, fossil fuel depletion and climate change. The people behind the transition movement see this as a historic, a pivotal moment. It's an idea that's gaining a lot of momentum.
With its history of boom and bust, Totnes has always had to find inventive ways of stimulating its vulnerable local economy. Like many traditions, today's Elizabethan parade appears to be steeped in history. But actually, it's a shrewd modern innovation.
On this day of our Lord, Tuesday, the 3rd of May, it's my proud privilege to welcome you to the Totnes Elizabethan Charity and Craft Market.
The weather isn't great, and Notting Hill Carnival it ain't. But today's event makes clever use of the town's past. Like much of Britain, Totnes hit hard times in the 1970s, but an enterprising local had a bright idea. Put on a show, an annual event. Bring back the Tudors. Bring in the punters.
Well, the stallholders are packing away now, and although it's a chilly day in May, it's been a very busy morning. What's so fascinating about this market is that it wasn't conceived in the era of doublets and ruffs, but in the age of hot pants and flares, more 1970s than 1570s. This is modern creative marketing, intended to bring cash into the town.
For Totnes, summoning up the ghosts of their Tudor past means reconnecting with better times. In the 1520s, it was the second richest town in Devon, richer even than Plymouth. The key to prosperity was the river, the superhighway of the region, shipping goods to other British ports and the continent. The verdant hills around Totnes fed a thriving wool trade. But the real cash crop came from nearby Dartmoor. 500 years ago, this vast, windswept expanse was transformed into an English El Dorado, with thousands of miners exploiting its mineral-rich rocks for a commodity that could make them rich.
This is what they were looking for and digging out of Dartmoor in very large quantities. Doesn't look much, does it? But these dark crystals are cassiterite. When rocks like this are crushed, and then the cassiterite is separated and then heated to around 1,200 degrees centigrade, this ore releases a very valuable silvery metal. And here it is, tin. This is what made Totnes rich.
Humans have been exploiting tin for thousands of years. But in the 1500s, it became more prized than ever as the key ingredient, along with copper, in a material that Renaissance Europe needed in large quantities. A material that sculptor Andrew Lacey often works with, bronze.
And what exactly are you doing here? What sort of temperature have you got to heat that up to?
Well, I need to get to about 1,100 degrees.
So at the moment you're just getting the furnace hot before you put the metal in, or?
It's just literally preheating it.
Okay.
England's West Country had found itself the leading supplier of a highly prized commodity. Tin put Devon and Cornwall on the map of Europe.
But why was tin so valuable?
Because it's found in so few places. It's found in Germany, Eastern Europe, but mainly it's found in Devon and Cornwall. That is a tin ingot that was found off the coast of the southwest.
It's heavy.
Yeah, it's hugely heavy, very valuable.
And once you've got this tin out of the ground, you've converted it into an ingot like this, what's it used for?
The simplest thing is like the pewter plate. So pewter is a mixture of tin and lead. Okay, so it's made into simple domestic ware. But other than that, it's made into bronze. Now, bronze is really important because bronze is the thing that's used for engineering, it's used for art, but also for things like cannon. And cannons, the real, as always, the military force is the driving point behind all this. Without tin, you can do none of it. And copper's found most places, but tin isn't.
What do you call this? It's not a forge, is it? It's a furnace,
Well,
or?
It's just a furnace.
With some copper and some tin, we're making bronze in the same way that it's been made for thousands of years. As long as I can generate enough heat.
It's a bit of a knack, isn't it, to get it to keep breathing continuously?
It's almost like being a rower. You have to keep a kind of steady pace to it.
In goes the tin.
Yeah. You can just see at the bottom of that, it's turning into liquid. The drips are going down.
This furnace, with my help, is burning at over 1,000 degrees centigrade, turning solid copper and tin to molten bronze. We hope.
There's more to these bellows than meets the eye. Not only are they 100 years old, but Andrew's put a great big slab of slate on them to help push them down, which of course means they're harder work to lift up again, but it means there's an even puff on both the up and the downstroke. It's just the kind of thing that are done 500 years ago.
You can stop now. I think we're right up to temperature. There's a lovely kind of sheen to the surface of the bronze when we do this. Right, what I need you to do is to hold back with this tool.
Right.
Just with a spade end of that, just to hold back all the charcoal that's sat on top of the molten metal.
It makes me really nervous.
It is a very important job. That's brilliant. Just keep holding it there. That's superb. Really good. Last bit. You've done brilliantly. That's great. So for those few seconds, everything's kind of won or lost in there.
I didn't like that. That was really scary.
When it comes out of this mould, the molten metal will have been transformed. I feel like I'm watching alchemy in action.
Can hardly bear to look.
That's absolutely amazing. I've never actually seen a bronze come out that colour. It's always got oxides on the surface and coloration, whatever. This is... Oh, that's amazing.
Maybe it's the bellows work.
Obviously.
I came along here today to find out why tin mattered to Totnes, but in the process, something much bigger has happened. It's been a huge privilege to spend so much time with Andrew, who's been practicing a craft that's been followed in this area probably since the Bronze Age. And what he's made today is this bell. That's a sound that's never been heard before in the world because this bell has only just been cast. And that sound is the sound of human ingenuity, and it's beautiful.
The Tudor tin merchants of Totnes were ingenious too, in their case at making money. They invested in the mines and in the stannery towns where the tin was traded, and they shipped it down the Dart to the wider world, where buyers were prepared to pay them top dollar.
Take 1 year, 1525. In that year alone, 250 tons of tin were mined in Devon. That would be worth around £4 million in today's money. The king of tin here in Totnes was a merchant called John Giles, who owned shares in one of the Dartmoor stannery towns and was the richest merchant in Devon. Number 2 on the county rich list was a tin and cloth tycoon called Walter Smith. In the age of the Tudors, this was Millionaire's Row. Totnes had never had it so good.
It's the booms that leave behind the architectural landmarks that define all our towns. Totnes' most striking civic legacy is the Guildhall, gifted by the tin merchant Walter Smith, and still home nearly 500 years later to the town council. Inside, it's a monument to civic pride. The name of every mayor from the 1350s onwards has been painstakingly recorded. Among the hundreds of names are those of the town's great tin tycoons, John Giles and Walter Smith. Wealth and power hand in hand. But the good times were not to last. Up on Dartmoor, merchants and miners had created a recognisably modern industrial business. Unfortunately, it had a recognisably modern downside too. Vast quantities of water were used to separate the tin from the gravel and the sand. And all that heavily polluted water ended up in the Dart.
Here in town, they reaped the whirlwind. When the Tudor antiquarian John Leyland visited Totnes in the mid-1500s, he was shocked to see that vast amounts of sand had been carried downstream from the tin workings on Dartmoor and, as he put it, choked the depth of the river that doth much hurt the Dart estuary. Well, in those days, blocking a navigable river wasn't just an environmental catastrophe, it was economic suicide.
Totnes lost much of its river trade to a neighbouring town. A town 8 miles downstream, at the mouth of the Dart. Its name, appropriately enough, was Dartmouth. To make matters even worse, by the end of the 1500s, the tin was gone and the boom was over. The 17th century poet Robert Herrick lived on Dartmoor and captured the mood. No trust to metals, nor to marbles when these have their fate and wear away as men.
With the tough times that followed the collapse of the tin industry and the river trade, this chamber witnessed some very gloomy meetings. In 1719, Totnes was declared insolvent and the council was forced to sell the leases on 50 or so properties that it owned in the town. It was a desperate act, a bit like flogging the family silver. To keep afloat, the town had to borrow so much money that in 1843 a government commission condemned the council for its excessive debt. It's poignant, painful even, to contemplate what this must have meant to a place that had once been on Devon's rich list. Financially, Totnes had descended into its own heart of darkness, a once thriving town, now lost for purpose, at the head of its choked creek.
Totnes's geography, tucked away up the river, surrounded by hills, had been perfect for Saxon defenders and Tudor traders. But come the Industrial Revolution, it was a town out in the cold, unsuited to big ships or the... Totnes's habit of asking searching questions about the way we live began here. Today, Dartington is celebrating the life and legacy of its spiritual founder, Rabindranath Tagore. It's 150 years since his birth. Tagore, painter and poet, the first Asian to win the Nobel Prize, was a social campaigner who set up a radical community in India. The young Englishman who helped him to do it, Leonard Elmhurst, was inspired to start his own ambitious project at Dartington. "I have begun to suspect," wrote Elmhurst, "that city life has a devastating effect upon human nature." Led by Leonard Elmhurst and his wealthy American wife Dorothy, Dartington was to be a utopian community and a model for radical education, guided by the ideas of Rabindranath Tagore. And what better way to celebrate him today than with a unique commission from a local artist.
This bell is made by Andrew Lacey, a great artist, handmade in honour of Tagore.
Satish Kumar is director of the Tagore Festival and co-founder of Dartington's Schumacher College, which teaches environmental and social sustainability.
Satish, can I ask you about Dartington and Totnes? The two seem to have this very close relationship, brother and sister, almost a sort of symbiotic relationship.
Yes. I would say Dartington is an integral part of Totnes. At Dartington, we have Schumacher College, which is a flagship college for learning about living on a small scale, human scale. And that is the idea of living in small towns, where you can live simply and you can have a sense of community and a sense of place. And this can happen only when you are a small community where you can communicate with each other. So it can happen in a place like Totnes, where it's very difficult to have it in Birmingham or Glasgow.
But Satish, if everybody followed your utopian dream and moved from London to Totnes, there'd be 9 or 10 million people living here and it would become a city.
No, I'm not suggesting that all people living in cities should move to small towns. What I'm suggesting is the big cities should not be too arrogant about themselves. I would like to have a small town culture in the cities. So if you are living in Camp Town or Hampstead Heath, you can create a small town in that area. London is not a community, but Hampstead Heath can be a community. This is why when we organized Tagore Festival, we had 2,000 people coming through the festival. And they were coming because they cherish that vision, that we want to create a new worldview, a new way of living, which is in harmony with ourselves, our human community, and with the natural world. And that vision is a very important vision for our time.
The Elmhurst's vision was to take the neglected, derelict estate of Dartington and bring it back to life.
Over the course of several decades, the estate consumed Dorothy's personal fortune of $35 million. But the Elmhurst's aim wasn't just to rebuild a viable community from ruins. It was to experiment. And to do it, as Dorothy put it, they'd create an atmosphere free from fear and competition, a sort of safe haven where everyone involved could feel that anything and everything was possible.
They set up 2 farms and applied the latest thinking in agriculture. They built a theatre, dance studios, one of Britain's first progressive schools, and a college of performance, arts and music. They revived traditional crafts and industries, creating more than 600 much-needed jobs for Totnes and the surrounding area. And they commissioned new buildings that were anything but traditional. Modernist architecture like this was virtually unknown in Britain when the Elmhursts brought in William Lescars, the radical Swiss-American architect. He designed houses for Dartington staff and new accommodation for the school.
Seen through 30's eyes, these buildings were startling, an incredibly confident break from the thin-windowed slate and sandstone traditions of old-world Devon. The locals must have thought aliens had landed.
Looking at it now, it may all seem a bit scattergun, the wild excesses of wealthy eccentrics. But diversity has always been the point of Dartington. After Tagore, they're hosting, among other things, a literary festival, a debate on nuclear weapons, a Suzanne Vega gig and a soil conference, ensuring that Totnes continues to attract its own particular brand of pilgrim.
I'm here now because it's beautiful. It's absolutely stunning. That's actually, if I'm brutally honest, it's the main reason why I came here, is because I just thought it was so beautiful. And I'm a sucker for aesthetics.
It's so different from being in the city. It's such a different energy. And yeah, I'm coming to live here, so I'm changing my life. I'm on the dole, so I've kicked myself up the arse, applied to work here as a volunteer, been doing 12-hour days, and I feel happier than I felt for a very long time.
Before I came to Dartington, I looked at a map and found myself...
I'm heading back to where my journey began, to the town wharf on the Dart, to see the latest chapter in Totnes' story of innovation. In Tudor times, this is where the tin and wool that made the town rich were shipped off to the ports of Europe. When the trade slumped, so did the harbour. But the story of the wharf here is a microcosm of the town story. Boom, bust, boom again.
The Dart trade seemed dead in the water when in the 1890s Reeves Limited built new wharves here, running a very successful import business, mainly timber from the Baltic. That was still flourishing when I canoed up here in 1970. It was a boom time. Then in 1995 Reeves closed down. Totnes, though, as I've discovered, has an instinct for experiment and for thinking big. It was this wharf again at the end of the 1990s that saw the beginnings of another revival. Unusual, innovative, and certainly ambitious, because this time somebody was thinking big. Really big.
The long-awaited launch of one of the world's largest yachts has gone ahead at Totnes in Devon.
Team Phillips, launched in the year 2000, was larger than the centre court at Wimbledon, a huge mast taller than 10 London buses. Her skipper, Pete Goss, captured the Totnes spirit when he said, "We've achieved the impossible. We simply wouldn't accept that these things couldn't be done." But in December 2000, she hit a fierce Atlantic storm. The crew abandoned ship and she broke up. A boom and a bust all wrapped up together. But Totnes is all about resilience. And today, on the same wharf that built Pete Goss's super yacht, the latest generation of maritime visionaries are putting Totnes on the world map. Since 2004, Baltic Wharf has been home to Woodvale Challenge, builders of the world's leading ocean-going rowing boats. And I'm feeling seriously out of my depth, sandwiched between not one but two world record holders. 19-year-old Sean Pedley is the youngest man ever to row the 3,000 miles across the Atlantic. And Simon Chalk, the company's founder, has rowed across both the Atlantic and the Indian Ocean. Woodvale's clients come from all over the globe, seeking a super specialised product with a price tag to boot. One of these will set you back a cool 40 grand.
Why carbon fibre? What's so special about carbon fibre?
Well, the material is really, really tough. So structurally, it's very, very strong. It's Formula One or aircraft technology. And in marine terms, I suppose the only boats that are made from carbon are the top-end open 60s, like the Ellen MacArthur type boats. So, yeah, the Formula One of the sea, and this is the Formula One of ocean rowing.
Yeah. How many people will be rowing this boat?
There'll be 4 guys on this one.
Do they sleep in these cabins in the end?
They do. So if there's a really big storm and they have to get in, then there'll be 2 in each end.
A shower, bathroom, jacuzzi, any facilities at all?
No, and you've got a bucket to do. Well, you have 2 buckets. You have one to go to the toilet in, which is, obviously the way you have to do it, and then one for washing. So all your clothes and all your bits and pieces happen in the other bucket, and that's life on board.
Different coloured buckets?
They're marked. Yeah. And the loo bucket normally gets given a name as well, so it stands out on its own. But it's quite basic, but it's quite good that it's basic.
And what brought you to Totnes?
We've been working on the Dart and rowing on the Dart for years. Not only can you have the shelter of rowing on a river, but you can actually poke your nose out into open sea. So it's really good to get that kind of cross training.
And do you think Totnes is welcoming to people with big new ideas like you?
I think there's a history of that. I mean, Team Phillips was here before us. There's been other projects that have run locally, and boats have been built here in the past that have gone off to do some quite amazing things. But it's just ideal, everything that we need to do, we can just get done. Yeah, it works really well for us.
The more I learn about Totnes, the more convinced I am that it's become a creative haven, the kind of town where the dreamers of impossible dreams can live with like minds, with people who encourage big ambitions. If you're going to row an ocean or convert a town to sustainability, the last kind of neighbour you need is a doubter or a pessimist, somebody who can't seize the moment. Actually, I'm not sure whether being Totnesian is an address or a state of mind.
From Pete's rickshaws to the Tudor market, from the solar panels all over town to the high-tech boats of Woodvale Challenge. This town continues to be a laboratory for new ideas, just as it has been since it began 1,100 years ago.
For a town that's not much larger than a village, it's a remarkable story. And behind that story, I think, is one main factor. The Totnes has come to be seen as a safe haven, a creative sanctuary, a place which, as Dorothy Elmhurst put it, is free from fear. And freedom, as we know, liberates the imagination. That imagination has given Totnes the chance to show how towns can be the communities of the future.